Recently, the South Korean government came out and for the first time ever took public accountability for the fact that they were basically just selling kids for a long time. They post-Korean War, there was a bunch of South Korean children that were adopted, primarily to the US. I think there was over 200,000 children total in this like kind of post-war period.
You bought a couple of them, right? You were
Yeah, back when I was back post-Korean War, I was like, why did I get a couple kids?
Korean kids.
This is a different life for me back then, though. I was a different guy. And of those like 200,000, 150,000 of them were kids that went to America. The thing is, in this, this is kind of during the period of Korean economic miracle, like rapid growth in the country. And there's two sides to this issue that are coming up. And a lot of these kids abroad realized over time that they had fake like background or history given to them through a variety of means.
They made it up?
They
made it up?
No, or kind of. So the most common example I could find is in a lot of cases, these adoption agencies in Korea, which are making money off of like letting foreigners adopt the kids, would run into situations where maybe a child in their care would die. So I, as an American who wants to adopt a child, maybe thinks, oh, I would love to help out this orphan from the Korean War. And I learned her name and I want to bring her over, adopt her, bring her into my family, right? And I go through that process and the agency gives me all their background information. I adopt the child. I sign like paperwork in the US to make them a US citizen.
Okay.
But on the other side of this is the adoption agency that quietly that child passed away during the time in their care.
They're just switching the kids?
And they just swap a new kid in for example, whose parents are still alive. So a lot of the kids weren't orphans at these agencies, right? They're just kids put up for adoption with their birth parents still alive. And then a bunch of these Korean adoptees over time found out that their backgrounds were fake.
They're not orphans.
And that this large scale, basically adoption fraud had been happening in Korea throughout all this time. And a bunch of people have challenged this and tried to take these cases to the South Korean government and to get them to acknowledge that this happened and to get an apology, to get like payments for damages, different types of things, right? And I sort of first encountered this story, I think 6 or 7 years ago, way before this apology happened, because there's a short Vice piece on this Korean adoptee in the US whose name is Adam. And he was adopted by a family that abused him. They were a really shitty family. He lived basically a terrible childhood. And the family he got stuck with never filled out the paperwork in the US to make him a citizen. Oof. And then because of his, I would say because of his upbringing, he wound up in a lot of situations where he wound up committing like crimes when he was younger through like his teenage years and his 20s. He cleans up his act, becomes a business owner, has a wife, has a kid. Now he's
good for you, Adam.
Now he's in his 40s, right?
Okay.
And he through this process, eventually finds out that his paperwork was never done properly, and then submits an application for a green card, like he should be eligible for. But because he submits that application, it flags the system that if you have any criminal history and you're an illegal immigrant, they deport him.
Oh, shit.
But he hasn't lived in
He's
Korea
lived 40 years in America.
He doesn't speak Korean. He doesn't know anything about Korean culture. And then he gets sent to Korea. And this was a big story back then. During my research of this general story around Korea apologizing for their end of the fuck-ups here, I followed up on Adam's story now that it's been years later.
Yeah.
And he managed to successfully sue the Korean government for the situation that he was in. And he got paid out $75,000.
But he can't go back to America?
But he still cannot go back to the US.
So he's stuck in Korea?
As of 2023, he was still stuck in South Korea and couldn't come back to the United States.
Your point that we should start an adoption agency because there seems to be good money
and
in it.
Well, if we start adopting Korean kids, I think we would just do it right.
I think we should do the agency. The agency side's making the money. They're selling the kids, right?
Oh, so we do want to make the money. We do want to sell the kids. We would just do it ethically.
Where's the profit? You have to pay $75.
Well, we got to get higher on the value chain.
Yeah, exactly.
You know
Exactly.
what's wild. Speaking
We
of,
just sell. Never mind.
hey, speaking of selling orphans who have parents.
Okay.
A little segue. I when I was 18, I went to Nepal for 3 months and volunteered in an orphanage. And that sounds great, right? Like, wow, what a virtuous young man. How smart and humble and handsome. But which, is all good. And there's all these pictures of me like
Which I was. So.
I was, I was.
Humble, handsome.
Yeah, Perry and I went to the same high school. They wrote an article about me. It's like Doug went off to Nepal to help the children in the
for
hills.
real?
No, this is real. Yeah. And so I did this. This was right after high school. And I was like, okay, this thing seemed a little off, but it's a good organization, all that. And then over the subsequent years, turns out that a lot of, particularly in Nepal, these orphanages that are a sort of popular place for foreigners to go and volunteer at to help these orphans. A lot of them aren't orphans because the parents in the rural countrysides of Nepal realize that if they send their child to this orphanage in Kathmandu, the city, that a bunch of foreigners will come and support them with money, and then they will get a better education. And so really what I did is I went and hung out near a school that said it was an orphanage that had parents, like a boarding school, I guess. And so already it felt a little weird when I was there. It's like something felt kind of
You
off.
can see the kids' parents right over there.
Yeah, they're peeking over the corner or whatnot. And so it's strange that I think well-intentioned, certainly people running the orphanage were very well-intentioned. They were trying to help orphans, right? And there were legitimate orphans. But this reminds me of that story of this orphanage in Korea just literally selling children who have parents. That's a lot more, I think, vile than what was happening in Nepal, or is, I don't know. But it's weird that that's a common thing, apparently.
Well, I think the theme that hits both these stories and almost everything we've talked about is not enough discussion of incentives. That's if there's an incentive because there's money to be made from
People are willing to abuse it.
people will
And
abuse
it may not
yeah.
be everybody, right? It's
Yeah.
not that everybody has the same moral code and always faced with the same decision. Everybody would be, robbing those Korean kids of their history.
Yeah.
It's just that because the position is allowed to exist, the guy
Someone's gonna
willing
do
to
it.
make the
Yeah.
decision is willing to step up to do it.
Yeah.
Which is bad. It is bad. It is fucking
No.
awful.
You said it was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think you said you kind of liked it. I don't remember what you said.
Yeah, there's a little smile. You
Yeah, a little
couldn't-
smirk.
For the audio
At least I
listeners.
got a podcast story out of it.
He gave us a toothy
I know
grin.
you suffered and you have trauma about your whole history being robbed from you, but at least I got to share it on a podcast.
Every time Aiden sees a really depressing story, he smiles because he knows he can get content.
Yeah, just seeing green, dude.
He's gleaming.
Oh man.
Maybe I need to be lighter. I'm sorry.
No. I don't know what to say about it, to be honest. It's really depressing. It's sad.
No, I don't think it's funny because it's
It's funny. It's so funny.
funny now.
Funny and
No,
interesting.
it's interesting and funny.
Aiden Calvin. Funny and interesting story about children being sold